Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We are going to get into the cortisol awakening response predicts intrinsic functional connectivity of the medial prefrontal cortex in the afternoon of the same day, and circadian photoreception influences loss aversion. So what the heck does that mean for you, especially if you're a new listener to the Fasting for Life podcast? Well, we're going to frame it out this way, and then we're going to dive into it. It's going to be why your morning determines your night, and how it's connected to circadian biology, willpower, and your fasting compliance, aka your fasting lifestyle. So, if you are new, welcome in. We're going to give you explicit action steps that you can take today, as we promised in our intro, that you can adapt in real time today to continue to further your fasting lifestyle, lose the weight once and for all, get off that dieting mindset roller coaster, and truly achieve the life and your day-to-day life that you want and truly deserve. So we are excited. Head back to episode 0, episode 1, if you want to know more about how fasting transformed our lives, our story, why we do what we do week in and week out with this podcast, our coaching, our challenges. And I'm really excited about this conversation because it connects a lot of the dots on things, Tommy, that we hear in our conversations and messages and DMs and contact us's and comments on the podcast and questions submitted during our challenges and in our weekly coaching calls. Is we hear a lot about this, kind of, I don't want to call, maybe I'll classify it as this as like the struggle bus.
Okay.
Like, I'm doing great, but then I fall off, or today was tough, or I didn't fast at all today. And really, episode 311 has been a go-to for us recently, and the feedback has been really positive on it, on a foundational fasting floor, right? Mm-hmm. So you're putting your lifestyle desires and wants and habits at the front of the at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, in importance, right? You're putting them in the forefront of what you're trying to achieve each and every day and each and every week.
Yeah.
So willpower is not a fixed personality trait. It's partly a time of the day biological state shaped by cortisol, circadian light, sleep, and your brain's prefrontal cortex readiness and ability to handle the things that come at you throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Especially as the day goes on.
Yeah, especially as the day goes on. So when we hear this a lot is, hey, I'm struggling with my fasting windows, or I'm struggling with breaking my fast, or there's slippage, there's snackcidents that happen, or I find myself standing in the pantry, right, being like, what the heck just happened? How did I get here? So it's for like the person who starts the new plan every Monday morning, or, let's say you've been off for a few days and now you're like, oh, I really got to dial it back in. Mm-hmm. So it's for the person who starts every Monday and wonders why it falls apart by 9 p.m. Anyone ever set a 24 or 36 or 30-hour fasting timer? Or maybe the Friday got away from you and you're restarting again on Monday and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do a 72-hour fast, and you find yourself eating lunch or dinner or in the pantry a few hours later. That's really what we're trying to unpack here, is what physiologically from a brain chemistry standpoint is happening. And it just so, once we looked into these two articles and the research, the correlation between the two was, well, the night sets up the day and the day sets up the night. So if we can put some clear, actionable things in our morning and our evening, that's going to allow us for our brains to be able to communicate better and allow us to make better decisions when those things come up. Because it's not an if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of times when these things happen, especially if you fall into a pattern of this where it's like a swing and a miss, and I've been there. So I'm speaking from a place of experience here. Um, when that happens, it can feel like, well, maybe I'm just not disciplined enough, or maybe I'm just not good at these longer fasts, or I'm not good at skipping dinner, or I'm not good at a flame day, like where I actually go through a full day of not eating, where I'm literally consuming those old long-term fat stores. And so instead of thinking about it like that, how we can think about it is what does the research, what does the evidence actually show as far as what's going on neurobiologically, and then what could we do about it? Because the reason why some folks don't struggle as much with these things tends to be because they're setting themselves up for success, and it's not right then at 8 o'clock at night or after that dinner window closed. It happens, like you said, Scott, before. It happens in the morning, and it even happens in the evening before that, so that neurobiologically they're set up for success, for prefrontal cortex strength, even as the day kind of goes on, right?
Yeah, so when we're looking at this, and we're going to talk through, and we're going to get a little sciencey, then we're going to talk about the 5 to 7 things that you can do to really, really anchor in this fasting lifestyle. It's not that cortisol is good or light is magic, right? Because we're talking about circadian alignment here and circadian biology. But that's what's going to make fasting easier, by improving the brain state that supports your restraint, planning, and your reward or loss aversion evaluation that happens later in the day. Because the reality is, your brain, nothing's wrong with you or your brain. It's just like its time zone is off. Like, has anyone ever traveled across multiple time zones, right? And then you get there and you're like, wait, what time is it, right? Even just me going 1 hour east or 1 hour west, right? And the kids and the wife are at home, or my wife traveled a few weekends ago. I'm always like, wait, what time is it where you are, right? So your body kind of gets off. So what we're going to talk about is that morning cortisol response, your brain's prefrontal cortex connectivity, and what light, willpower, and what these simple kind of AM, PM routines or rituals that we want to build. Now, we talk about this a lot when it comes to fasting. You know, one of the biggest questions we get is, what's the best fasting schedule to lose 20 pounds? Most people come to fasting for weight loss, right?
Sure.
But once you have the schedule, there's an entire list of other things that impact your ability to follow through on that fasting plan.
100%.
And it's typically sleep and stress that are the two that derail us most often. And when we talk about stress, we've got that emotional relationship food. I'm an emotional eater. I'm a foodie. Halt the BS. Am I hungry, happy, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed? Because we're going to look for that dopamine hit, right? We're going to look for that, the emotional release or comfort that we get when it comes to our relationship with food. So when we're talking about this, as your belly empties and your fasting day goes along, and this is why we've changed our tune, we shift your fasting windows to earlier in the day, right? And the research is clear that your body is more apt to better process that energy coming in and set yourself up for a better evening routine, less fall-offs, less snackcidents. But as ghrelin ramps up, because that's the mechanical hunger hormone in your stomach, saying, feed me, Seymour, and dopamine then tends to deplete, you're going to go to those things that give you that quick fix. So if we can line up our morning to set up our evening, and then our evening to set up our morning, we can really get a handle on some consistent foundational levers that we can pull that aren't just setting the timer and white knuckling it, right?
Yeah. And so when ghrelin is peaking later on in the day, it also means that motivation is really at a low point during the day too. So you're feeling a low amount of motivation and a high amount of stomach growling and just mechanical hunger cues. So then this really can be a perfect storm, especially if you've waited all day, or you're used to your environmental cues. Also, maybe the family sitting down for dinner. Maybe you're smelling your neighbor's barbecue or whatever the case may be, and all of a sudden it feels like the perfect storm. And even though I had a solid plan this morning and I cruised through the early afternoon, Now all of a sudden it feels very tempting, and that can be very problematic. We're trying to pay back some calorie debt here. We're trying to burn through some old fat stores. How's that going to happen if I am breaking this fast early? So what could we do about it? There's some proactive things that we can do for sure, but I think setting yourself up for success the evening beforehand really kind of goes a long way. So, just thinking about some boundaries for yourself as far as when is my sleep? When am I going to get into that kind of like getting ready to go to sleep? Kind of, turning off the blue lights. What else am I doing as far as sleep hygiene and things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into those action steps here in just a second. I just want to kind of set the stage from a physiological standpoint, just talk through a couple of things and what the studies found.
Okay.
Because, Dr. Huberman does an incredible, if you just search Dr. Andrew Huberman cortisol, there's like a 7-minute explanation of your cortisol awakening response and your cortisol curve. And it's incredibly powerful. He's like, I'll just drop a simple video on this. And it's like, a dissertation on cortisol and circadian biology. It's really cool.
Wow.
So there's 3 things that these studies looked at. They looked at your cortisol awakening response. This is called your CAR. It's the rapid rise in cortisol that happens in the first 30 to 60 minutes after you wake up. So why it matters? It's your body's built-in start the day surge that mobilizes energy and helps switch your brain from sleep mode to active task ready mode, right? Mm-hmm. That's separate from the full 24-hour circadian rhythm that we have. But it's that first 30 to 60 to 90 minutes, right? Your body's waking you up, giving you energy, turning on your liver to say, hey, we need some blood sugar to get the day going. The second thing that was looked at in the study was the AUCG, the area under the curve with respect to ground. What the hell does that mean? It's a way to quantify the total amount of cortisol released in that first hour, that first CAR that we just mentioned. Mm-hmm. Why it matters? Because when you have more area under that CAR where there's that normal cortisol response, what they found in the Wu et al. Study was it meant a stronger, more robust output. And this was the metric that predicted your stronger medial prefrontal connectivity later in the afternoon. So why does that matter?
Willpower, right?
So more power, more willpower. Mm-hmm. So the last thing is the MPFC, which is this medial prefrontal cortex. It's the area in your brain that's involved in self-reflection, emotional regulation, evaluating consequences, and controlling your response to stresses. Physical, emotional, chemical stress.
All the things that we need to make good decisions later on in the day.
Yes. So why it matters? Because Wu et al. Found that people with higher morning area under the curve, the AUCG, had stronger resting connectivity, so your body's baseline of your medial prefrontal cortex, of your brain area that controls those areas we just mentioned, in the later times of that day. So that's suggesting that your control monitoring networks, your red alert, what am I doing? How did I get here? Why am I in the pantry? Those were better wired up to make better decisions. So you've got your car, driving your car in the morning, your cortisol surge. You've got the area under that curve of how big that surge is or how normal that response is. And then you've got the downstream brain area, the prefrontal cortex, that's your control center that's using that energy to help you hit the brakes on those impulses later on the day.
Okay.
So, what the heck does that mean for you? How do we set up our AM and our PM routines? Right? We'll just get into the what to do in the morning, what to do in the evening bullet points. Tom, is there anything else we should go into in terms of, I think we should talk a little bit about loss aversion, because that second study, before we go into the action steps or how to identify this in your own day-to-day, that second study, I just want to get the actual title, Circadian Photoreception Influences Loss Aversion. So this was a study that was done in a gambling setting. And what they found, because we're going to talk about light here in just a minute, sunlight, blue light, etc., in sleep. What they found is that, and this is why I'm not a gambler, but this is why when you go to Vegas, you don't know what, and you're sitting at a blackjack table, you don't know what time it is. They pump in the bright light, the noise, the oxygen. The light is going to actually have a physiological effect on your loss aversion. So what's the risk reward of making that decision?
Yeah, makes
It's
you
going
a
to
riskier
it's
taker.
going to
Yeah.
minimize the risk, the short-term risk, and eventually add detriment to the long-term consequence. It doesn't make the long-term consequence, seem as important in the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it gives you that more kind of flippant attitude
Yep.
towards
It's just one.
yeah, it's just one little decision right now, and your progress throughout the day really is something that you've gained, something that you've earned, something that you've worked towards. And if you're confronted with a pantry or a fridge situation later on in the day, you essentially have the ability right then to give up progress that you made during that day. And so if we're looking at this as a potential gamble, a risk to reward, if you will, then it makes us riskier risk takers when we're not set up with proper circadian rhythms, proper cortisol response, and then also that exposure to blue light. The more exposure that we have as it gets later on in the day, it actually influences our behaviors. So we don't have as much of that prefrontal cortex, that just cognitive ability to think through a decision. It's more likely that we're going to default to more automatic type of behavior, or more of our like quick stress response, a more emotional type of response, rather than being able to think through it and make a rational decision that's aligned with our long-term goals.
And let's be honest here, hormones always win, right? And I joke around this about this with my wife as we reflect back on our three children and how different they are and how amazing and difficult and rewarding and disgustingly terrible sometimes parenting can be.
Right.
But overall, it's amazing. But when you think about like pregnancy, hormones always win. The cravings kick in, right? I remember I put on the 30 pounds with my wife that first pregnancy. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? What's happening here?
Yep.
Like, oh yeah, you know what? The pine ice cream does sound good. The pickles do sound good. The whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So hormones always win, right? Because your body is going to. So if you're constantly fighting it and white knuckling it, this is a conversation for you on what we can do to set up your brain's ability to manage these scenarios when they happen, not if, right?
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. This is your do this tomorrow morning bullet list. Consistent wake time and sleep windows. Setting a consistent wake time, and I've done a deep dive with Dr. Brian Walker. He did a series of podcast episodes where he goes into sleep science and the levers that you can pull. And at the top of his list is consistent sleep and wake times, even on the weekends. Because irregular sleep timing is directly linked to an altered cortisol awakening response, that morning awakening bump that we've been talking about, and overall HPA stress response dysfunction later in the day. So consistent, I know we preach on this often, and this is something that I have gotten so much better with over the years tracking it on my Whoop, is on the days that I go to bed on time and I don't allow myself to go upstairs and sit in front of the screens and work, or my wife and I set the timer, we read, we go to bed, and I wake up on time, those days, my fasting lifestyle is so much easier.
Right.
When you get crappy sleep and you're stressed out, your ability to white knuckle or to stick to a fasting window or make good food choices freaking goes out the window.
Sure. And if it's there early in the day, it might not be there with you later on in the day. Or if it's there on Monday with you, or Monday, Tuesday, it might not be there come Thursday, Friday,
Yes.
right?
Oh, what
later
a
on in the
week.
week. Yeah, for sure. It's like it's additive throughout the week potentially on how much you feel, how much willpower you've had to use, how much white knuckling you felt throughout that day or throughout that week, and then usually it comes back. Like you have to pay the piper at some point. So if any of that resonates with you as far as a pattern or maybe a short-term season, or just like banking it within your fasting tool belt so that when the time does come that it's a little bit more stressful, etc., you have these tools and you can be prepared, because this is how we get proactive with this. So we win in the long term.
Here's the great news about this is you have another chance tomorrow. But don't kick the can too far down the road, right? But you got a shot at this every single day, right? Which is cool to think about. So the second thing is consistent wake and sleep times. Morning outdoor light. If I had to pick wake versus sleep, I would pick wake over sleep. In terms of picking, don't try to protect both goals at the goalposts at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
Just imagine you're on a soccer field and you're playing goalie for both teams. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
I would pick the morning wake time consistency over the bedtime, and we'll talk about bedtime and blue light here in just a minute. Here's the biggest lever you can pull, and this is what Huberman says too, is get outside and get morning sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking for 10 to 20 minutes without sunglasses, without lenses. If it's overcast, get a little bit more, do 20 to 30 minutes, just get outside. And if you can't do that or you live in Alaska, they have these really cool things called 10,000 lumen lux lamps. You can get them on Amazon. They're called Happy Lights. They're like 20 or 30 bucks. And you can literally turn this on in your house. You can do we have some clients in the functional medicine space with the consulting that I do, where this is part of their home care prescription is when you're getting ready in the morning, turn this lux lamp on, do your makeup, get ready for the day.
Mm-hmm.
They even make glasses you can wear. I'm not going to go that far, right? But get this morning light because this natural light anchors your SCN nucleus in your brain. It sharpens the cortisol peak earlier in the day, and it helps it fall at night so you're more able to have your brain turned on to make better decisions later in the day. And it also sets up good sleep the next night.
Wow.
I love it, right? So how simple is that? It's free. Go outside, okay?
Yeah.
Next one is movement, Tommy, earlier in the day. So earlier in the day, in the morning, we don't want to be just banging our HPA stress response with high intensity boot camp, 30 to 45 minute to 60 minute workouts. You want to do like walking or rucking or a zone 1, zone 2 Peloton ride or some light kettlebell work. Within the first couple of hours of waking, this zone 2, this lower movement, this lower intensity movement in the morning is going to acutely bump that cortisol and mobilize some more energy, which is going to increase your ability to handle those stressors or those snackcidents or those decisions later in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also doubles up that those are lower on the intensity scale. So then what you don't have to worry about is usually a big hunger response also.
Right.
Which is nice too, because a lot of times if we're not cognizant about our exercise timing, then that can affect our ability to stick to adhere to a nutrition opportunity window at some point later on in the day, or maybe it's tomorrow, versus our fasting window too. It can make it even more tempting, and it can also cause that ghrelin to spike. That ghrelin
post-workout
spike,
hunger.
Yeah, it can cause another ghrelin spike, which is then tough because you might have to use your willpower through there. As far as white knuckling is concerned, you might not have enough left in the tank, if you will, come 7, 8 o'clock at night.
So that movement, if you are doing high intensity stuff or like heavy resistance training, right? You're going for a PR that day, then you want to do that mid-morning to early afternoon. And I found this intuitively over the years when I used to get up at 5 a.m. and do CrossFit, then go to the clinic and see 100 patients. And I used to get up and go and make myself go, but I would absolutely be tanked after my morning workout.
Yes, me too.
My favorite time to work out is between 11 and 1. It's just physiologically, my body was like, hey, dummy, like, go do this. I just have better workouts, high intensity workouts or strength training workouts during those times.
Yeah, all the people you see in the gym, like during the lunch hour, it's like they've got something figured out.
They got it dialed in.
Yeah, and because even if you can't do that, like if you don't have the flexibility or the location for that, it's okay. So just whatever you're going to do, the highest intensity, even if you just did it for a few minutes during a lunch break or around lunchtime, would be the ideal time. Yep.
And then let's talk about caffeine. So we talked about movement. Let's talk about caffeine and hydration. Okay. So we need to hydrate immediately in the morning first. I also love to pair this with maybe like 3 to 5 minutes of some nasal breathing or box breathing, because it really calms down the sympathetic and stimulates a nice nervous system response. Mm-hmm. So I delay my coffee 60 to 90 minutes, because what we want to do here is you want to let your car drive as it normally should in the morning and let your normal cortisol awakening response peak and avoid masking fatigue. because that's what caffeine will do.
Sure.
It'll blunt that. And I notice if I have my coffee right out of the gate in the morning, I feel more foggy and tired between 1 and 3 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
If I delay and hydrate with electrolytes and salt first thing in the morning and delay my coffee a little bit, I don't have that afternoon slump. And then I have a solid 10-hour before bedtime caffeine rule. No caffeine 10 hours before bed. Because sleep is one of those, little prickly things that you get here in the Texas fields that get stuck between your toes and they hurt really bad.
Mm-hmm. Got to protect it.
Yep. And then strategic first calories. So if you're a female, you've got stress, HPA issues, you're a long-term low-carb dieter, we really want to do a protein-forward earlier meal to stabilize your blood sugar and prevent those exaggerated cortisol swings throughout the day. This is more of a fasting, flexible kind of lifestyle. So we've changed our tune over the years. OMAD dinner, yeah, you can use that to lose weight and lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, change your life. But physiologically speaking, eating earlier in the day not only sets yourself up for less fall off the wagon events later in the day and snacking and not closing your window cleanly and ending up in the pantry, et cetera, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's going to give you a better response to what your physiology and what your brain needs throughout the day. So protein-paced breaking of starting your nutrition opportunity earlier in the day, right?
Yeah. So that means, breaking out of that pattern that a lot of us get into, which would be just sticking to a dinner OMAD. And when we make those strategic, deliberate, proactive calories early decisions, that means that we get to align that with when our decision making is at its peak, at its strongest, and then we get to close a window during a time of like maximum logical discernment, where we can make those decisions and we can align those to align with our long-term goals, because insulin sensitivity wise, we're better off earlier in the day. And then we also don't have to rely on the willpower. So now what that can lead to is kind of a gap in the afternoon or in the evening. So I like to be really, really proactive, especially if you feel like you've been in that pattern of having a tough time in the evening. Be very proactive with what you're going to be doing with your hands. Where are you going to be? Getting the heck out of Dodge, being away from the kitchen or any sort of cues like that. And then the other thing that we can do is be really consistent, because if you're in a fat loss phase and you're using some, like let's say you're using time restricted feeding, well, 16-8, 18-6, even warrior fasting with a 20/4, you can align those windows earlier in the day, which doesn't tend to come intuitively for most of us, because we tend to go into the later on into the evening time. So if that's the case, then move those a bit earlier in the day. And then if you're using longer fast, like maybe alternate day fasting, you can still do the same thing, where everything that we're talking about here is leveraged by consistency on a day-to-day or an every other day basis. So maintaining that schedule is really like your superpower for what we're talking about.
So those are all the morning levers, right? So consistent wake time, morning light, morning movement, delay the caffeine, hydrate properly, strategic protein-paced breaking or starting your nutrition window earlier in the day. You can add in some, the morning routine, 3 to 5 minutes of some slow box breathing or nasal breathing, and then quality protein-paced whole food diet nutrition opportunity choices also are in that category as well when you break your fast. The evening danger zone, we've got 4 things. Light discipline at night. So you'll see I wear these yellow glasses all the time. I've got a pair of red ones at night as well. We have a dim non-LED light in our bathroom. We do red light as a family before bed. My son had some eczema issues, so we all just gather as a family in the media room and do 20 minutes of red light before bed. So light discipline at night. Dim the overheads 2 to 3 hours before bed. Use warmer, lower light sources. Use screen filters. Turn your my screens are always on nighttime mode. My computer screens and my phone screen. Because what happens is, this is the second research paper in what they do in the casinos, is that blue and rich light acutely changes your loss aversion, right? That whole risk reward of the decisions you're making.
Yep.
Right? and it delays your melatonin. So it's going to shift your cortisol stress response later into the night, which is going to then allow you to have more of those, man, what am I doing here moments?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, why am I eating again? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Right? So light discipline at night is incredibly powerful. Consistent bedtime as well. In the morning, make your decisions for your, like, how the night's going to go. Make the decisions on what you're going to do for food. And pre-decide in the morning when your car and your MPFC connectivity is favorable.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to reduce that evening decision load.
That's a good way to think
Lower
about
cognitive fatigue makes it easier for the prefrontal system to stay engaged. And then have a closed kitchen ritual. We say this to my kids every night, 8 p.m., kitchen's closed. Nothing good happens after 8. Right, Tommy?
True story. So just having those little boundaries goes a long way. And the way that you're thinking about this is what are my long-term goals? What is it that I want from my fasting lifestyle? And then how can I build in a few little soft boundaries and a few little reminders around, because you could print something out, you could write it and then put it on the pantry door, put it on the fridge, put a little visual reminder, because sometimes that's really helpful in those moments of maximum ghrelin, minimum willpower, and then really like face to face with just that moment of temptation, that if we can just gather up our faculties just for a moment, then that can be long enough for us to go, wait a minute, what am I doing here? This isn't what I wanted to be doing. I'll come back. I'll see you next nutrition opportunity window here. And then I get to bank more wins, more calorie debt paid back, and more feeling good from, fulfilling the plan that I set out for myself.
All right, Tommy. Well, we've got some action steps. We've got some things. We've got some guardrails for you on how to adapt your fasting lifestyle. If you want links to any of our resources, the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss, sign up for an upcoming challenge, head to the show notes, click the link, man. As always, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.